in the activities we have planned later. Everyone, just out of courtesy and respect, if you're not the main speaker, keep it on mute. Please utilize and access the chat if you have any questions that we can address towards the end or even as we go throughout as it pertains to the information. And I'm really looking forward to this event and we're going to have a great time. So, just to get things started, this is our first official cultural corner to celebrate and acknowledge Hispanic Heritage Month, 2023, which is October 5th or September 15th through October 15th. And we're going to tell you a little bit about who we are as a committee with APTA Virginia. So just to go over the event itself, we're going to discuss who we are, give you a little introduction to who we are as the really Cultural Humility Committee of the Diversity and Inclusion Council for APTA Virginia. We're going to cover what Hispanic Heritage Month is, go over some background information, which is helpful for the trivia. So make sure you're paying attention and keeping all the information in your head as we go over and review some of the things that we learn. And then we're going to go into things that are more relevant to us as healthcare providers, especially as physical therapists. We talk about disparities when the Hispanic population, specific ones that we can keep in mind, especially when it comes to barriers in accessing healthcare and physical therapy. And then we're going to have a student highlight, which is Morgan Mount joining us, and we'll make sure to give you all the awesome information about her. And I know I'll do a formal introduction and bio and background. And then we're going to talk about action, how to create positive change. So we want you to be able to leave this event today with something that you can share with your community, put in place tomorrow, as early as tomorrow if needed, and even some resources that might be useful for you moving forward as a clinician to share with your students or colleagues. And then, of course, the closing where we can go over any questions that we might not have been able to address throughout this segment and just wrap up and tie any loose ends. So, like I mentioned, we are the Cultural Humility Committee of the ABTA Virginia Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Our committee mission is really to create a community through events and education, promoting inclusion, equity, awareness, and understanding. It's been something that I recently joined on maybe like a couple of years back, and it's been awesome in terms of giving back the community support and hosting events like this. And we'll also have information if you're interested in joining more events or even becoming part of the committee so you can get involved. We're always looking for people to join us. But the goal of our committee is to create positive change and action, really to elevate the consciousness and inspire clinicians to do the same. So that awareness is key. You don't know what you don't know. So events like this allow you to be exposed to certain things that you might not have been able to, especially in our respective communities, depending on who we're interacting with on a day-to-day basis. And again, the purpose of the committee, we have a few main ones that we want to hit on, including creating a mentorship program, hosting events in the community, really having contacts across the district, and then bringing in students to assist and help with their transition into the workforce. And specifically our Cultural Humility Committee, these faces which you're seeing right now, I'm not sure if Jessica will be able to join us tonight, but I have myself, Lynette, and Anna here present tonight joining you all for this awesome event. And this is part of our effort to, again, give back, educate, and create events that are a little bit on the social side where you can have some fun, but also learn and receive that education too. So getting into Hispanic Heritage Month. So what exactly is Hispanic Heritage Month? I'm sure you've seen either ads or like just even if you're watching the NFL, you have all these terms and phrases and everything coming about, but you might be confused or even just unaware of what exactly it is. We were able to put in a short video that kind of covers the background and history, so you can tune into that.
Felicidades! It's Hispanic Heritage Month. Today we will be sharing with you when and how this holiday is celebrated. But first, some history on the holiday itself. It was originally Hispanic Heritage Week. The commemorative week was established and signed into law by Democratic President Lyndon B. Johnson in 1968. Then, 20 years later, in 1988, the week was expanded to a month by legislation signed into law by Republican President Ronald Reagan. and it's from September 15th to October 15th. But why does Hispanic Heritage Month start in the middle of the month? Well, September 15th was chosen as the starting point of the commemoration because it's the anniversary of independence of 5 Hispanic countries. These 5 countries all declared independence on September 15th, 1821, in an interesting way. More on that later. Now, Mexico, Chile, Brazil, and Belize celebrate their independence days in mid-September as well, but on different years. A coincidence? Nope. Let's look at that time period a little bit closer. As you can see, the years of all of these independences all occurred progressively within the time span of 20 years. And they were all independents from the same country, España. As history has shown, the Spaniards, the most famous being Christopher Columbus, set out to discover the New World, which led to the Spanish colonization that started around the 1400s and early 1500s. The land, of course, was already populated by the indigenous people of these countries who long lived in this part of the world. The Spanish conquistadores overtook and declared all of these countries under the ownership of Spain at all costs, to help them rise into more wealth and power. All of these countries remained under Spanish power for almost 300 years. As expected, the locals were never happy with the Spaniards taking over their land. Over the years, it became a class warfare. There were many rebellions that took place to redress the perceived injustices that were not dealt with by the authorities. So, let's fast forward to the early 1800s. One by one, starting in the beginning of the 1800s, these countries began fighting for their independence. And it was the Mexican War of Independence that was the catalyst where the dominoes began to fall. Within those next 10 years, despite early failed attempts for freedom, the 5 Central American countries all obtained their freedom with the Act of Independence of Central America. Hence why they all have the same date, September 15th, 1821, and why Hispanic Heritage Month starts in the middle of the month. Today, Hispanic Heritage Month is recognized and celebrated in different cities, with parades, musical events, award shows, street fests, and family picnics.
All right, so I hope that you all were able to get a little bit of information that you might not have known before, especially when we talk about Hispanic Heritage Month and why it starts in the middle of the month throughout the middle of October. And now we're gonna head into our trivia portion. We're gonna be putting our brains to the test and getting a little bit of interactive kind of community chat going on.
All right, so I'm stopping my presentation of that so that I can get to my presentation of a Kahoot. So hopefully you have something that you can join with with regards to a Kahoot, because that's what we're going to do. So if you guys can wait for it to pop up and join. Stop the music. You're able to log on. Okay. Hi, that's a great name for right now. Flipping penguin. EW bug. I think I never said it. Amigo, LA. I think some may actually be driving, so I might not be able to. I think I'm going to start. So I'm sorry if I missed something. All right, so welcome to Hispanic Heritage Month 2023. And the first question, Hispanic Heritage Month starts on September 15th because... Yes, 5 countries declared independence on this day. Amigo is on top. Nice job, Amigo. All right, Cuba and Guatemala established their independence from Mexico, Peru, Argentina, or Spain. Yes, from Spain. Very good. All right, who's on top? Amigo is still on top. Very nice. Okay, which is the Spanish-speaking country with the largest population in the United States? Mexico, Colombia, Spain, or Argentina? It's Mexico. Very good. Oh, VW is on top now. They're on fire, it looks like. On what day does Mexico celebrate Independence Day? May 5th, September 16th, January 20th, or July 4th? Nice job. September 16th. That is correct. All right, who's up on top? Oh, BW is still on top. Nice job. All right, which U.S. state has the largest Spanish-speaking population? Texas, New York, California, or It's California. I know, I initially thought Texas too, and I'm from California, but it is California. LA is on top. I don't know LA is, maybe they're from California. All right. Oh, in 2022, according to the CDC, blank percent of Hispanic Latino adults aged 18 and over found to be impaired to poor health. About 50%, 16%, 23%, or 74%. 16%. I know, we thought it was higher too. I thought it was higher when I was reading it, but 16%. LA is still on top. Good job, LA. All right, in 2022, according to the CDC, blank percent of Hispanic or Latino adults age 18 to 64 were without health insurance coverage. 62%, 33%, 18%, or 28%. It is 28%. Very good. That's a hard one. LA is still on top. Nice job, LA. All right, according to CDC, which was not a leading cause of death in the Hispanic Latino population? Diabetes, pneumonia, stroke, or cancer? It was pneumonia. Good job. LA is still on top. All right, 10 out of 14. According to CDC, between 2015 to 18, the blank percent of Hispanic or Latino men aged 20 and over with hypertension was 46% was their correct answer. I think most of you put 58. That was close. Yeah. LA is still on top. Nice job. All right, according to CDC, blank percent of Hispanic or Latino women aged 20 and over with obesity was 47%. Yeah, 47% were obese. LA is still on top. Nice job, LA. True or false, Hispanics, Latinos diagnosed with HIV are more likely than whites to receive antiretroviral treatment. Yeah, sadly, it is false. All right, who's on top? Is it still LA? It is still LA. Nice job, LA. Almost done. 2 more. Blank percent of all reported TB cases in the US were reported in Hispanics or Latinos. 87, 54, 29, or 48%. Oh, it quit. 29%. That is correct. LA is still on top. All right, last question. Rate of TB disease in Hispanic Latinos is over blank times higher than the rate of TB disease in non-Hispanic whites. 4, 8, 12, or 20. It is 8 times higher. All right, who's on top? Who took the podium? Was it LA? VW. Nice. VW got 3rd. Amigo was 2nd, and LA? It is LA. All right, good job, LA. Now I want to know who LA is. This is loud. Okay. Well, thank you for playing. I'm going to stop presenting that. Hopefully you had fun. Did anybody learn anything? Nice. I know everyone is doing awesome. Now I have to figure out how to get back to my presentation though, huh? Okay. So just a little bit more on, hold on, there we go, on some of the health disparities that we talked about in that Kahoot. But maybe even just a little bit more background. So Hispanic Latino population includes Cuban, Mexican, Puerto Rican, South or Central American, other Spanish cultures or origins. So you may hear of a bunch of different countries that are lumped in here, nationalities that are lumped in here with regards to being Hispanic or Latino. The 2020 census data, 62.1 million Hispanics living in the United States or live in the United States. I can barely read my own screen on that one. I apologize, guys. 18.9% of the total US population are Hispanic and Latino. 2nd largest racial or ethnic group after the non-Hispanic whites. And Mexicans rank as large as 61.6% of that population. So of that Hispanic Latino population, 61.6% of them are Mexican. The language fluency and educational attainment, although there are a lot of Hispanics that speak English, 28.4% of Hispanics state that they are not fluent in English. And I think that we do see a lot of those within the clinical setting. 18% or 18.8% of Hispanics compared to 40.1% of non-Hispanic whites had bachelor's degrees or higher. So not a large percentage compared to the non-Hispanic whites. 5.7% of Hispanics held graduate or advanced professional degrees compared to 15.1% of the non-Hispanic white population. And economically, 24.5% of Hispanics compared to 42.8% of whites worked in managerial or professional occupations. In 2020, the average median household income was quite a bit less than that of the non-Hispanic whites. So $55,000-ish compared to 74.9, I guess, thousand-ish dollars for the non-Hispanic whites. So quite a bit of difference there. In 2020, 17% of Hispanics versus 8.2% of non-Hispanic whites were living in poverty. So there's quite a bit of disparity between the two, or of the Hispanic Latino population. With regards to insurance, the highest uninsured rates of any racial or ethnic group within the US are the Hispanic and Latino population. In 2020, 18.3% of Hispanic population were not covered by health insurance, as we talked about in the Kahoot, or as you guys guessed in the Kahoot, I should say. Maybe you knew it, I don't know. In 2022, according to CDC, 28% of Hispanic Latino adults aged 18 to 64 were without health insurance coverage. So there's quite a large population of the Hispanic Latino population that is not covered. Hispanic health-wise, there are obvious language and cultural barriers that I think that we see, which is why one of the reasons we're holding this tonight. Doesn't mean that you're going to come out of here fluent in Spanish by any means, but hopefully you have some words to take with you and some phrases. Lack of access to preventive care, as we talked about in the Kahoot, and as we can even read here in all of the stats that are provided. There's a lack of health insurance. And the leading causes of death among Hispanics, we talked about, or you saw some of those. Pneumonia wasn't at the top of the list. It doesn't mean that they don't have, it is not a cause of death for them, but it just wasn't at the top of the list for them. But cancer, heart disease, accidents, just accidents in general, cerebrovascular diseases, stroke, being one of those, diabetes and Alzheimer's, those were at the top of the list for death of the Hispanic population. So just thinking about the health disparities, I think that's where we thought, well, maybe we can bring in a student that we know, Morgan Mount, who is here with us today. Morgan nicely offered to be a part of our presentation. She is a third-year student with us at the University of Lynchburg. She has a bachelor's degree in exercise science from Liberty University. She is interested in acute care, inpatient rehab, neuro, and prosthetics. And she is involved in the piano group and the community health clinic, where I've been lucky enough to be a faculty supervisor for her, and listen to her speak Spanish to the patient that we have coming in that speaks Spanish in there. And it's been lovely listening to that and hearing that communication and seeing that interaction and relationship. But she lived in Cancun, Mexico for 9 years before she started the DPT program. And when I talked to her, she has a wonderful story to tell, which I'm going to have her talk to you all about after we do a little bit of learning of Spanish. But I think that she will be able to give you a different perspective, and hopefully you'll be able to ask her some questions yourselves. That's the goal of this, is for you to also ask her questions. It is not a formal, like I said in my emails, this is not a formal event. So we really do want it to be a little more informal, more discussion based. So please feel free to ask questions along the way. This next portion is about learning some Spanish. So I do have a question before we start, and that question is, how many have taken Spanish or speak Spanish already? Other than Morgan, I know Morgan does, but of the people that are on this call, how many have taken Spanish or speak Spanish? You can put it in the chat, or you can raise your hand, maybe with the little emoji things, or speak it, whatever you would want to do. Took it in high school. And if you haven't had any at all, that's okay too. It's more trying to figure out like where we want to start and how much time we want to spend on different things. So I know that I took it in high school as well, took it in high school. Is there anyone here that has never had any Spanish at all? I wish I had taken it instead of French. French is good too, Dr. Igler. I understand that. All right, some people might just be quiet. Okay, we're gonna go through, and the first part of this, like I said, there's the list, so you can have the list up if you want to as we're going through, and try to pronounce them, look at the meanings, the English meaning for the words as we go through. But I think we're starting with just pronunciation basics, and Morgan is going to take you through some of the basic concepts with regards to pronunciation of words.
Yeah. So, hi everyone. Thank you so much for letting me talk, and I'm so excited about this. So just some little basics. The one really cool thing about Spanish is that if you read a word, like if you just kind of like think like, oh, I thought that was me. I'm so sorry. And so if you look at a word, it's gonna sound exactly the way it's spelled. Unlike English, where we have a lot of words that can like be completely different the way they're spelled and the way they sound. In Spanish, if it looks like it should be said that way, it typically is. Um, the vowels are A, E, I, O, U, similar to English. And so you can like sound them out. So like for me and then cumpleaños, you'll hear E, A, even though they're together, you can hear them separately. The C typically in Spanish sounds like a K. So like, as you can see, like codo, it'll sound more like a K, but then if there's an I or an E, it'll sound more like an S. So cinco or cielo, it has more of that S sound at the beginning. The J, it sounds like an HA, kind of. It's just like an H instead. So jefe, it's just a little bit more like an H. And the funny thing is that the H is silent. We don't ever use it. So hola, hoy, you just are going to use the vowels and then completely forget about the H. And then que is just like the letter K. Pretty easy, pretty simple. And then the QUE is going to sound like a KW. So like cuenta. So that one's just a little funky, but if you kind of get the que sound out there, that's kind of the best way to do it. And then Spanish, we have the double L's. It's kind of like its own little like letter. It's pretty common. That's kind of sounds like a Y a little bit. So llamar. And then the ñ, I think that's one. It's got the N with the little squiggly line over it, which is always fun. It doesn't sound too different from a normal N. It just has a little like accent to it a little bit. So like niños, it's just a little extra kind of oomph to it a little bit. I don't know how else to explain it. And then double R, it's the rolling R. So if you can't roll your R's, I'm so sorry. But thankfully it's not too common. But
I can't roll my R's. It's terrible.
It's hard. My mom still can't do it, and it's like the bane of her existence, and it's terrible. But it's okay. They know what she's trying to say, and it's great. So yeah, like corre or correr is kind of how you would use that. Yeah. So those are just some pretty like basics, and I know it can seem a little daunting at first, but it really starts to flow once you start to speak it a little bit more. I don't know if there's any questions about that, but pretty straightforward.
I know, definitely ask questions if you have questions. So if you want to look at your list of words or phrases.
Yeah. Let me pull
Hold on. I can't really share that one. You can pull that up. And we have some slides where we're going to go through them. And they may seem really advanced for some if you haven't taken it at all, but we'll try to break them down and go slowly. There's 10 slides worth. Some of them are English to Spanish. Some of them will be Spanish question, and then you have to figure out what it means in English. But maybe use your list if you have that available to you, and we'll go through the hello, how are you? And then we'll give you and tell you, hola, hasta luego. Gracias, ¿cómo estás? And so we'll do that for you for a few, and then we're going to maybe have you guys participate and try to read them for us, if that's not too scary for you. And if we have volunteers. Okay, so Morgan's going to take this over.
Yeah, no, Dr. Nate did so great with the first two. So, hello, how are you? The options would be hola, hasta luego, gracias, ¿cómo estás? Hola, ¿cómo estás? Or gracias, buenos días. Which one do you think which option is the English translation for that?
We have C's coming in.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty unanimous. That's really good. Yeah, hola, ¿cómo estás? Would be the perfect way to do it.
What does gracias, ¿cómo estás mean? Can anyone tell us that? Maybe they're typing. Oh. Thank you. How are you? That's right. Exactly. Thank you. How are you? That would be right. And then what about hola, hasta luego? What do you think that means? That might be harder. I don't know if I put hasta luego on the list, Morgan.
Yeah. No, they're getting it though. That's 100% correct. Yeah. Hello, goodbye.
That doesn't make sense at all, does it? What about gracias, buenos dias? You guys are doing great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Good day. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
You guys are awesome. You're rocking it. Okay, let's go to the next one. Spanish to English.
Yeah. So same thing. I think this one is definitely on the list. So head in English, would it be rodilla, corazón, pie, or cabeza?
I have D's. Lots of D's coming in.
Yeah. They were fast about it too.
They were like right on it. They would
Yeah.
have gotten it within the Kahoot time
Yeah.
of like 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Nice. Yep. Lots of D's. You guys know what rodilla is? That one's on the list.
I don't know if it's on the list. One might be hard.
It is.
I
put that one on the list.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wait, it might be.
I did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Dr.
Yes,
Whitler got
knee. She got it. She's reading her list, maybe. No, it is. It's the knee. What is corazón? Corazón. Heart. Yep, absolutely. MPA? What about PA? Did we have that one on? We had that one on the list, right?
Mm-hmm.
Foot. Yes, absolutely. Good job.
Perfect.
Okay. Next one. Spanish to English.
Okay. So this in Spanish would be ¿Dónde duele? So it could be, when do you have pain? Describe your pain. What is your pain, or where is your pain?
I have one answer.
Mm-hmm.
More might be coming. I'll wait. Yes, they have D's. I have D's coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, very good. Can someone tell me if we wanted to say, when do you have pain? What would when be? Maybe type in just when. What would when be in Spanish? Cuando, absolutely. Yep. Good. All right. Next one, English to Spanish.
Alrighty. So does your pain wake you up? So, ¿tiene dolor por la noche? ¿Tiene dolor cuando duerme? ¿Dolor de estiramiento? ¿O tu dolor te despierta?
I have B's coming in.
Mm-hmm. A couple B's.
I have B's, lots of B's. Or D. Gail says D. I don't know. It's one of the two, B or D. Yep, Morgan, do you want to tell them the answer?
It would be D. It would be
D. Yes.
Yep.
Yep, D. Good job, Sonia.
Yeah.
Yep.
So B is, do you have pain while you sleep? More. And then, so this one is if it'll wake you up at night. So it's very similar though. So, and then the first one is, do you have pain at night just in general? And then C is, does it hurt when you stretch? Or like, does it feel more like a stretch? It could be either one of those.
Good. All right. Good job.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay. So next one is to if you're trying to tell somebody to bend their knee, levanta su pierna, endereza su codo, dobla tu rodilla, or baja su dedo. That was so fast.
That was so fast. It might have been because we already went over the word. Yes, see, we have to repeat. We're repeating.
No, yeah.
That's right. It's C. Yep.
Yep.
Can anyone tell us what levanta su pierna means? Now you got to take time to write. Lift. Yep.
Yeah.
Lift your leg. Good.
Yeah. That's perfect.
What does B mean? Endereza su codo.
That's a harder one. I think.
It is a harder one.
Yeah.
I know I'm making you guys think. It's late, isn't it? Endereza su codo. What does that mean? Straighten your elbow.
Yeah.
Good job, Sonia.
Great. Yeah.
Nice job. Okay, next one. Spanish to English. I think this one will be easier.
So, ¿por qué? Yep. When, why, who, and what. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I know. How do you say who in Spanish? Not like a owl who. Like, who are you? Who? It's on your list.
Oh,
That's
that was so good. I like the French version in there. That was really good.
Very good. Okay. French. It's hard, Carol. It's hard, Carol, to mix the two. That's for sure. Well, Leah might be there too if she took French in high school. All right, Spanish to English.
Okay, this one's a bit longer, but tienes dolor en la espalda is you have pain in the back, you have pain in the heart, you have pain in the kidney, or you have pain in your wrist.
We got lots of A's.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Yeah, that is correct. It is A in la espalda.
Very good. All right, so you could probably take any of the tienes dolor en la or en el and put it to any of those statements, whether it be the kidney or the wrist, which you have in your list as far as kidney and wrist, as well as heart. So you guys got heart, corazón. You guys had that. Good job. Okay, English to Spanish, right hip.
Mm-hmm. Oh, pulmones ambas, hígado izquierdo, tobillo derecho, or cadera derecha.
We have lots of D's.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nice job.
Yeah, definitely D. That was good.
It is
That was
D.
really fast too. Yeah.
It was really fast. I know.
Mm-hmm. See, they don't even need me. They've got this
They don't
already.
need-
It's been great.
What does that first one mean? What does A mean? Pulmones
Yeah,
ambas.
that's beyond our ability right now.
It's not. It's on your list. Both ones. Yes, Hunter. Good job. What about izquierdo? What does that mean? Left. Yes.
Yeah.
Good job. Nice job. All right. I think all of these words are on your list. I try to put ones that you have on your list on this one. All right. I think this is the last one. The last
think
one.
so, yeah.
Does anyone
Mhm.
want to try to read these for us? We might get silence on this. I don't know.
Totally fine.
No, they don't want to.
I'll try it. I don't
Okay.
care. Acuéstate en la espalda.
Perfect.
Very good.
Siéntate en la silla.
Good.
I don't know. Is it la silla right?
Yeah,
Plus,
that's
yeah,
perfect.
yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Párate en el andador. That one is a little rough.
On the
Acuest-
door.
Andador, yep.
Andador? Okay.
Mhm.
Acuéstate en tu estómago.
Yeah, those
Very
were perfect.
good. Yes. I feel like
That
you
was
get
great.
extra points. Calvin.
You have to be willing to say things wrong.
Oh, that's true. That's very true.
Yeah.
All right. So lay on your stomach is, I don't know if these answers, I think these answers were for this one.
I think
Are
so.
all these answers for this? I don't remember anymore. Are you guys putting D? Is that what you guys put? D. Does everyone agree with D? You can use your little emojis even. Hopefully you put D because D is correct. Yay.
Yep.
Yay. Anna. Okay, so acuéstate en la espalda would be what? What do you guys think? We have partially the same thing, only the last word is different. Yep, lay on your back. Good. What about siéntate en la silla? This one you actually might want to know if you work in acute care. Sit in the, what is a silla?
Mhm.
Chair. Yep, absolutely. Good job. Nice, Hunter. And then párate en el andador. This one you might want to know too, if you work in acute care, skilled nursing, or even in a outpatient clinic, but or home health.
Mhm.
I can give you a little bit of a hint. Párate is stand in the, and it's something we use all the time, especially if they're unstable. So an andador is a walker. Good job, Victor. All right. So if you guys want that one and add it to your list, I don't think I put that one on the list, but that one would be a good one if you're working in any of those settings to know those words too. Kel, did you have a question?
I have a question about parote. Is that different than levante? Maybe
Levantate.
levantate? Is levantate not stand up? Okay. I might be getting it mixed up.
No, I think that was great. Levantate is like kind of get up, and then like parate is just stand up. So they're very similar. You could probably use either one.
Got it. Like more like getting up out of the bed or something would be more
Yeah.
like that. Okay.
Good question. All right. Nice job, everyone. So before we move on to Morgan's experience, does anyone have any questions? We have about 12 minutes left, and I really want Morgan to have time to speak too, but if anyone has any questions of those, hopefully the list is helpful. All right, so I do want Morgan to talk a little bit about her experience when she was in Mexico and Cancun, because when she was telling me, I was like, oh, I think you need to explain this to everybody and talk about it. So I'm going to leave it to Morgan to explain her experience while she was living in Cancun.
So just I had a little bit of experience with healthcare, not too much. But Mexico is, in Mexico specifically, it is generally like a, like healthcare is provided to everyone, but the healthcare is not very efficient. But if you're willing or able to pay for it, you're able to get care. So it's kind of similar to like Canada or other places like that, where it takes a long time to get care if you just don't have the money to afford it, unfortunately. But my greatest experience was when I was 16, I was diagnosed with leukemia. I was in Mexico at the time. And so when I got diagnosed, I needed a couple of blood transfusions or platelets. And one of the really unfortunate things about where I was specifically is they don't have a blood bank available. And so we had to find friends and just people around us that would willingly donate their blood specifically to me. We had to find people who could match the blood type. They had to do all this fasting and different kinds of things to be able to give that blood specifically to me. So it's not just readily available. And so people like that have accidents and stuff, it's puts them in a more dangerous position because it's kind of harder to find blood that they can use. I was very, very fortunate and blessed to have people that were willing to do that. But also, I was unable to get treatment there because in Cancun specifically, they don't have the resources or the abilities to treat cancer. And so, I think for me, my mom still worked technically in the States, so we had American insurance. So I got to come over to the States to get my treatment. But I knew other kids that had it too. And they actually had to go to a whole different town and state to be able to get their care. And they'd have to drive back and forth, or they'd have to move their whole family to this other place, Merida. So it's about like a 3 hour-ish drive to get there from where we were. And so there were a lot of families that had to move to be able to receive any kind of cancer treatment, or they'd have to drive there once or twice a week to do that. And even smaller things like imaging, if my mom needed an MRI or a CT scan, we had to drive out there to be able to get that kind of care. Even though Cancun is a very busy and touristy place, they just didn't have the resources to provide that kind of care to the people around. But so again, I was very blessed in the way that it happened, and everybody is always very kind and sweet there. But that was also because we could afford that kind of care. So we knew families that didn't have that kind of money, and so you would wait to get any kind of treatment for months or years. And a lot of times people don't realize they have any kind of health condition until it's a little bit too far progressed. So kind of like what Dr. Renee was talking about, we have that patient, or just other patients that I've seen, they don't realize they have diabetes or they have hypertension because they don't get it checked out because they don't have anything available. And then something big happens, and it's not that it was necessarily preventable, but there were actions that could have been taken if they'd had like the medical equipment necessary, or even the education for it. Because we didn't get to learn a lot of that kind of stuff. So it's been interesting to look now, because as you guys saw a little bit before in the presentation, there are some conditions that are more common in the Hispanic community, and it's not something I knew or grew up knowing, and nobody around me knew it at all. But yeah, so education is a really big thing that is kind of lacking in the area, and just resources in general. If you don't have the funds to get care, then you likely won't get it at all, which is just heartbreaking. But yeah, so like, I don't know, like if you have patients that are from Mexico or other countries, just kind of knowing that their education or their knowledge may be very limited. And for physical therapy specifically, it's actually considered a real luxury in Mexico. I never knew of a single person that was ever recommended to go to physical therapy. They just had to figure it out. They got discharged, or if something happened, they just had to figure it out. We had to go to physical therapy within the hospital system if any family member ever needed it, because it's just so uncommon. But yeah, so there may be a little bit of disconnect, and that it's, yeah, but if you educate them, they will like understand, and they know they need it. But yeah, it's just not something that's ever been readily available necessarily to them in the past. So yeah, it's kind of fast, so I apologize.
Thank you for sharing. Does anyone have any questions? I know I have a couple in my head, but I do want to let others ask questions. I think maybe I'm curious of, and I don't know if you would know this answer, but maybe it's more of a thought than a question of, if they don't have insurance in Mexico and they move over to the United States, I mean, we see a large percentage of the Hispanic population that does not have insurance. And I know it's not all Mexicans that are in the Hispanic population, but there's a large percentage of Mexicans within our Hispanic population in the US. Is it because they don't believe that they need it? Because that's not what they had back in Mexico. So is it just not as important here? Whereas for us who live in the US and grew up with it and know the importance of it, we tend to get it. Do you know what I mean? Like I think that's one thought that I had along the way of, we say that there's a large percentage who don't have insurance, yet on the other side, if that's not what they're used to,
Mhm.
maybe that's just a piece of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with my very limited like experience with people here, I know quite a few of them don't have necessarily the money to pay for it, or it's not necessarily an option at their jobs. Which is unfortunate if they get paid so little. A lot of times it doesn't come with those extra benefits. From what I've seen, it doesn't come with those extra benefits. And so I think sometimes they don't necessarily know they need it, or they just feel like they can't necessarily afford it, or they'll be okay without it, kind of thing.
I just wanted to make a comment if I could. So I did, it's been multiple years ago, went to Nicaragua as a missionary there for a week, only for a week, short time. And one of the things that we did is we went to villages, very remote villages. And of course, those people didn't have food. So medical help was not readily available, but we would go take a doctor to these villages when we would go and serve stew, and that would be part of what we of our mission. And so I asked the question because a lot of it was women and children coming to see the doctor. And a lot of the kids, they gave a lot of antibiotics. So the thought was that they had infection or whatever. And so what happened was, so I said, well, wait a minute, this doctor only goes once a month to these villages. And I said, so what happens? And they said they either try to get them somewhere, which they usually can't afford to do it because they can't even afford to eat, or the kids die. It was really hard to hear when we have.
Yeah, I don't know how I would react to that. That would make me sad. I think I would cry. I don't know if I even have anything better than a cry.
I cried a lot on that mission trip, just letting you know.
I can imagine. Is it like that also in Mexico, Morgan, would you say?
A little bit, yeah. They just, if they don't have the resources, people will try to get funds, but yeah, it can happen. I think another big one, just because I have a love for like amputees and like prosthetics, that's not a thing in Mexico really. Like I talked to Dr. Davis before, they got to go down there, but a lot of people, if they lose a limb, they're just stuck using crutches or a wheelchair for the rest of their life, and a lot of times just destined to a life of begging for money. So just little things like that. If nobody like kind of goes or like does missions or decides to go down there from here, a lot of times they won't ever get that kind of care or treatment that they need.
Hey, Morgan, I have a quick question. Can you talk about maybe going to maybe speaking about some of the common offenses that maybe we may not realize that we may have, or some of the things we may do? Because I'm always thinking about that other person. So, like, for example, just automatically going into speaking Spanish with them when they're like, oh, I speak English. Like, what are some of the common offenses, some of the things that we have to kind of remember?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it's honestly something that I still trying to struggle with a little bit because you never want to assume, you know? So I typically will ask a person, like, which language would you prefer I speak to you in? Or just kind of initiating that. And if because a lot of times they'll understand what you're saying and they just can't respond. So they could probably give you a gauge on that, like what they would prefer. Um, I personally tend to always err on the side of caution. I'm very just kind of testing the waters to see, and then as you get more comfortable. But I always just ask and see what the person's more comfortable with. Because if they'd like to practice their English, we can definitely do that, or we can go back and forth. So, yeah, that's what I would do, I think.
Morgan, I have a question. While you were there, did you notice any kind of bias against people with disabilities that still goes on?
A little bit, yeah. I think I'm trying to like I think it's different. So because when I was really young, I got to go to school here in the States, and it's different. Like we see children that may have developmental delays or any extra kind of like or injuries or just anything kind of still incorporated into school, and that's just not how we grew up in Mexico. It's completely separate. There are certain schools that are specialized, um, especially for children, but and at least where I was, I think it was a mission team that started a school down there for individuals with autism. So even adults in their 30s, 40s, 50s could go there and do work. But in other parts, it's just kind of a like, you do what you can do, but and we'll try to help. It's very family oriented, so the family will take care of them, but the community may not, unless there is something set in stone, which is not very, very common.
Thanks.
You guys have asked some great questions, and just for time's sake, I'm going to go on to the next few slides and try to wrap it up. But I really appreciate Morgan for joining us. You had a great story to share, and I appreciate everybody's questions for sure. Hopefully we can all take something away from it. I know I can. So just taking action, what can we do? I think some people have already talked about it with regards to mission trips, but some of the things we came up with, I think I'll have Anna talk about this if she's still with us.
Yeah. Muchas gracias, Morgan, for telling us about your experience and the culture in Mexico a little bit, and for teaching us those phrases. All right, so action steps are always very important. So from this information that we're learning, what can we do to help cultivate a sense of belonging for our patients that we have who identify as Hispanic or Latin American. So something that is very important that is overall increasing representation within our profession. So if we go to the next slide, to give you a little bit of a perspective of the degree of the representation gap within physical therapy, I wanted to highlight some information from the 2020 U.S. Census. So you can see that in the U.S., Hispanics make up about 18.9% of our population, but only about 5% of our profession. So something that the APTA is trying to do to bridge this gap is expand student recruitment efforts within PT programs and within the programs themselves, submitting recommendations to CAPD for accreditation standards to improve diversity efforts, and also developing more committees like this subcommittee on DEI efforts. And the campaign, they launched the campaign for future generations in 2020, and it's a 2-year fundraising initiative to support DEI efforts like the minority scholarship and things like that. If you want to learn anything more about the mission and what the APTA is doing, you can go on the website and to learn more or contribute and things like that. Okay. Another thing that we can do is to make sure that in our clinics, We have interpreters and translated documents like intake forms that are written down so that patients who have difficulty communicating or reading, understanding English have access to these resources. And so on the next slide, we have some resources that we've found. And so the first website is a blog with multiple resources for like courses that can be taken, books that people can read. And also on the next one, technical difficulties. And the second website lists some apps that people can use, just download on their phones so that you can use it when you're with a patient. And on the right are some apps that multiple resources. There were multiple resources that listed these and that they were commonly used. So I'm assuming that they're decent for translation purposes. And the link on the bottom, the GTE Localize, ranks these apps and provides more description on them so that you can pick whichever fits your needs. And a few more steps that we can take is to, within your organization, try to create resources or affinity groups to create a more welcoming space and a safe environment for people with different cultural identities, and to celebrate cultural identities like what we're doing for Hispanic Heritage Month. And in addition to learning some words and the language, just developing cultural literacy so that you can build rapport with your patients and promote awareness of these health disparities is very helpful to do.
So I guess we'll leave it up to you guys with regards to any closing or final thoughts. If you guys have any other questions, please feel free to ask them. I appreciate your patience. I apologize for that glitch. I clicked on my other screen, whatever it's called, tab, and it went away. I'm sorry, Anna. But yeah, so I was going to also try to put the links to those resources in the chat box if you guys want those or if you need those. I don't know if you do. I do know that we used or some of our students used the Google Translate in the clinic, and it worked really well. So if you have to use it, it did work well. They would just talk into their phone basically, and it would come out in Spanish, and the patient would speak in Spanish and it would come out in English to us. So it did work very well and pretty efficiently. It's not like you can really hold a great conversation with a patient, but you can still get some words back and forth to each other. So Google Translate did work well. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody for coming. Hopefully you learned something. If nothing else, you have a list that you can take with you. Let us know if you need anything or have any questions. I appreciate it. Have a good evening.